What is the gold hidden in this lead?
Yes. Okay.
Great.
That's
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Creative Altar Artist Interview Series. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to a very special guest, longtime mentor of mine, Lorie Eve Dechar. She's also the author of the quintessential classic Five Spirits Alchemical Acupuncture for Psychological and Spiritual Healing. She's also the author of Kigo, exploring the spiritual essence of acupuncture points through the changing seasons. Lorie's a poet, an artist, a dreamer, a healer, a teacher, and someone that so many people look up to. With her partner, Benjamin Fox, they lead this incredible international healing community called A New Possibility. Today, I'm excited to ask Lorie about her early entry into the world of healing, being an artist, and the way that the artist encounters the inner critic at different stages of the creative process. Lorie shares with us about the birthing of her new book and the challenges, the way that we can overcome these challenges as creators by staying resourced and connected and really standing by our creations. So I'm really excited for this conversation and to share this conversation with you. Thank you for being here, and let's get started. So, hi, Lorie.
Hi, Julie.
Welcome
So good to
to
see
our
you.
conversation. Today, we have the pleasure of combining these interviews together, artist and healer, because I know that you and your work and practice encompass these things and so much more. I would love it if you could just take a moment, perhaps, and introduce yourself to
Hmm.
those who may not be familiar with you and your work.
Okay. Well, Julie, first of all, thank you for inviting me.
Pleasure to
And
have you.
I
I'm
love
so,
talking with you. We've been talking for a very long time. I think
yes,
it's an
absolutely.
extended conversation around this exact topic of how do you combine a healing practice with an artistic life or creative life when that is really so necessary to your soul.
Yes.
I very much have always experienced myself as someone who needs a creative life. I write and paint, but at first, those two parts of me felt like, oh, how can they come together? And when I decided to become an acupuncturist, I felt like I was leaving behind my writer's life, my poet's life. I was like, okay, I can't make a living as a poet. Maybe it'll open up more in this direction. And but then what I discovered was that they dovetailed, particularly through the writing of Five Spirits, and
Yeah.
from there on. So it's very much to me now, the practice of healing is a kind of art. And I think the more creativity we bring to it, the more it becomes that.
I don't know if I realized, Lorie, that you were a poet in your early life. And it makes so much sense because you've brought the poetry of the spirit points in acupuncture to life as a healing tool in such a unique way. I think I always consider you an alchemist as well, and
Mm,
a real
thank you.
source
Yeah.
of inspiration in the overlaps that I have seen myself in the creative process and the alchemical process. So, before, I think it would be interesting though, if you don't mind, to kind of go back to the beginning, young poet Lorie, and what were the first inklings of your path on the healing art trajectory? Did you have any early experiences that have introduced you to the esoteric or to
Mm.
be interested in the idea of healing? Walk us through that
Yeah, that's it's
process.
interesting to sort of sit with that because as you ask me that question, I feel that young part of me is right here.
Hmm.
She's kind of always with me. And the image that comes to me when you ask that question is when I think I was probably 4 years old. I the notion of life and death already became palpably real to me through finding little animals in the woods or birds that had died.
Okay.
I would I seemed to have a way of discovering these little creatures, and I started my own cemetery. It was a burial ground in the woods behind our house, and it's a very potent memory for me, and I think it was truly the beginning of my alchemical life.
That's
Is I would
amazing.
bring these creatures to this very special place and tend it. I literally would tend this burial ground and make little installations around the graves, but it wasn't
Wow.
like a sad place. It was kind of a transformational place. And I was really young.
Were you doing any kinds of ceremonies for these
Oh,
animals while you
yes, I
were
would
buried?
do ceremony and create little sculptures. And
Wow.
that was when I was really little. I think that the next big moment in my life, when healing became palpably real for me, was when my father developed a brain tumor when I was 10, which was
Wow.
is
Yeah.
still a pivotal moment of confront with illness and the effects of illness. And that was traumatic. But even more traumatic was the way my family didn't have tools
Right.
to transform the experience. So instead of it becoming a conscious opportunity for growth and maybe even a soul transformation,
Hmm.
it kind of ended up being a closure. No one talked about it. So I feel that's had a big, big effect on my commitment to languaging the possibility of transformation, even with a really difficult, challenging life event.
In your years of getting into this type of work, working with energy healing, working with the power of words and ceremony, have you discovered any sort of other special skills, psychic abilities, empathy, or anything else that you have kind of found out about yourself over?
I think for me, that practicing the medicine brought forward
Hmm.
intrinsic capacities that were already in me and are probably in all of us,
Yeah.
but get buried
Mm.
by modern dualistic, rational approaches to the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Over time, just putting our fingers on the acupuncture points or
Hmm.
taking the pulses, or from the artist side, opening our eyes to not just what's immediately seen, but what's on the other side of sight.
Mm.
So, doing that over time, I would describe what's become very clearly part of my organization and way of being in the world is a kind of seeing the unseeable,
I love that.
being present to a kind of other level of vision. And it's very much in my training programs when I'm teaching students, it's to discover your own, what I call alchemy. What is your alchemical site? And for all of us, it's a bit different.
Yeah.
For me, it's as if I'm dreaming while I'm awake. So I will literally be sitting with a person and see, and it's a kind of seeing that is real, but I mean, it's not, I know that there's no coyote sitting next to my patient, and yet there is a coyote.
Mm, mm, mm.
Our medicine spans many different ways of organizing reality. One of the big problems that Chinese medicine has faced in the West is that Westerners have a tendency to say, okay, well, let me look at this medicine through the lens of modernity.
Right,
And it keeps breaking down because we can't prove Chinese medicine
right.
through a purely rational, quantitative, causal lens.
That's correct.
Chinese medicine comes from a much more mutable, mythical, magical root.
Yes.
When I look at the points, my exploration of the points, I want to open to all of those ways of knowing.
Mm,
So the research begins with a more mental, okay, let me look at what history tells us, etymology tells us. But as soon as I enter into the etymology of the point names, boom, I open this door
that's
into
the
an
language
ancient
again.
way of
Yeah.
seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Because the points themselves, the point names themselves and the characters go back thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I open to a point name. On the one side is my kid, my little one, who's like having so much fun just looking at the graphics and the designs. And oh, look, there's a elephant in the shape of the character, which means nothing. And how did that elephant get in there? But then there's also this ancient sage or, you know, philosopher, doctor from 4,000 years ago who's guiding me into the
Mm,
point
I love
through the
that.
point name.
Yeah.
So we can go back to that shamanic original touching this point and feeling into, you know, palace of weariness. Where do I go when I just touch that point beyond even meaning to a kind of a magical connection to chi? Then I overlay the myth of the point name, the palace. I'm going to a place where I can, if it's the palace of weariness, this is a place of restoration. I would go when I'm tired, I would go to
Mm,
restore myself. And then I might layer over that some of the more modern usages.
okay.
And through that layering of magic, shamanism, mythic alchemy, modern scholarship, there's an opening into something that is multidimensional. Alchemy is not just an instantaneous spiritual enlightenment. Alchemy is an ongoing practice. I say it's like we learn to dream while we're awake
Yeah.
and be awake while we're dreaming. The distinction between the dream and
Mm-hmm.
our living mental consciousness has become so radically separate
Yeah.
that we've lost exactly what you say, the connection to a living world filled with intelligence and medicine and spirit, which is
Yeah.
actually the reality of the planet that we live on.
Yeah. The artists seem to come across an aspect of themselves that is can be quite critical,
Mhm.
self-critical. And I've been very curious about the role of, what we can consider, we can call it the inner critic. A lot of artists that I've spoken to, they in art school, critique is an inherent part of learning, of
Yes.
becoming a better artist.
Yes.
So there's that side of it where you're able to be self-reflective and keep developing, pushing yourself creatively. But then there's another side that some artists describe as less constructive, that in fact can be quite destructive, and that can emerge at any stage of the creative process. So I would love to hear more about the if what your experiences are with this aspect of creativity.
Yeah, it's so big. And I know even anyone who steps outside as a healer, as an artist, once you step outside of the parameters of, let's say, what the collective expects, which really is, in my opinion, the definition of art, is
Mm.
that we're stepping outside, we're looking beyond the parameters of the normal and seeing something, opening our eyes to something that is not just regularly seen in some way. And of course, in doing that, we're taking a big risk of being alienated or being um, marginalized. There's something about being willing to face those feelings that's
Mm.
necessary in an artistic process. I think for me, the critic, who I know very well, sometimes I need to just say, thanks for sharing, but you're really not helpful right now. Sometimes I need to be much more vehement. And other times, as you say, I can transform that critic into what I would say alchemically a bit of lead.
Okay.
That within that critical voice is an opportunity for growth. I That's what I'm working with right now as I have a completed book manuscript, but I have to bring it out into the world. And I'm in a big confront with the critic, and I am really trying to open to what kind of growth are you inviting me to here?
About your first book, Five Spirits, and you described how there was some challenges when you first wrote it on getting it published. And when you shared that story, I was so surprised because it's such a sort of a classic now. I thought it would be really interesting just to hear a little bit more, if you don't mind sharing, what that process was like, because there's so many young writers and artists who create something and try to get it out into the world, and it doesn't always work right away, and it can be so discouraging, and it can really be like a place where the inner critic can start to become quite destructive. So I was wondering if you would share your story about that and how, things worked out in the end for you.
Well, it's so funny that you're asking me that because, in a sense, I'm in that process again.
Okay.
And it's all there.
It's
I
still there.
I just completed a manuscript that I've been working on for 6 years.
Okay.
Spent a year working with a wonderful editor, Christian Leahy, and then another year working with my partner, husband Benjamin, who's a really zealous editor, and he went through the whole manuscript. So it's a, I really feel and that this baby that I've been carrying for all these years is ready to move out into the world. But the process of moving this baby, that and we all know, in an artistic process, like you're gestating, you're feeding it, you're living with it, you're putting it to bed, you're waking it up, and then it's finally, okay, I do think this kid is ready, at least for preschool. And honestly, I'm joking about it now because I guess as a crone, I can laugh about these things. Whereas with Five Spirits, I was suicidal. But, I started sending letters out in the spring as to agents, to other writers, to people that I thought, and literally, I joke about it. I'm counting on my fingers how many I've sent out that I've gotten no response. NR. One agent I said do in the spring, and 7 months later, I got a reply that said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. It took me so long to respond. I was changing assistants, but your project sounds really interesting. Unfortunately, blah, blah, blah." But she did write back after 7 months.
Is
So,
this the Five Spirits you're talking about right
no,
now?
this is my
Oh, this
current
current
book
project.
that
Okay.
is looking for a home. So
Right.
I would say the process is very palpably real right now. How do
Okay.
we stand for our work?
Yes.
With Five Spirits, it was not so different. I worked on that book for 10 years.
Yeah.
I was a new writer. I had this big mess of a manuscript that I had sent out. I
Hmm.
probably got 20
Yeah.
rejections. I remember on maybe the 20th rejection. And in those times, because it was 25 years ago, you would have to send out the whole printed manuscript in a box and with a cover letter, and it would come back. And I remember just throwing the manuscript on the bed. I'm going to forget it, just forget it. I'm going to shoot myself.
It's awful.
But I then got an editor for that manuscript, and working with an editor really put that book into a shape. But people would say, "Oh, it's a very interesting concept," but nobody wanted to touch it. It was
Yeah.
like a big chaotic mess. So working again, refining, staying with it, because I, on some level, believed that the book mattered.
So, can we pause there? Because I think this
Mhm.
is like the really juicy spot that, at least for me, this is what I'm interested in this moment in the creation of an artwork's life, where,
Yes.
it maybe something's being channeled from a larger source, but the truth is there's an individual human being who's living their life very invested in the outcome of whatever the creation is, right? And if you're getting rejections, you're not sure like what's going to become of it. Like how did first point, what sort of things would your inner critic say to you? Or and were you able to differentiate between yourself and, like an inner critic? What kind were they
It's
trying to
so
discourage
interesting.
you, or what were
Yeah.
they saying?
So, what's interesting is as we're speaking, I'm having this dual experience because this is my fourth book that I'm working to bring out in the world now.
Yeah.
Five Spirits was my first.
Yeah.
The middle two were easy. Kigo was published by Singing
Yeah.
Dragon. It already was a niche book with a niche publisher, and it just went right through.
Yeah.
The Alchemy of Inner Work
Hmm.
was a kind of a how to book. It was not hard. We found a publisher, it went through.
Yeah.
But Five Spirits was my first book. I had no voice in the world,
Right.
in the larger world. And I love what you're saying, Julie, because there is a way that, yes, Five Spirits was a channeled book in many ways. It was also a heavily researched
Yeah.
book,
Yeah.
brought those two together. But to find the place that said, even though I've had 20 rejections, I'm going to keep believing in this. Honestly, Five Spirits, I would say that I feel when you asked me that question, that there was a matrilineal
Hmm.
surge of support. Now, that was my mother actually who was alive at the time, and
Mhm.
was, and I dedicated the book to her, Diane, my mom,
Diane. Okay.
because
Thanks, Diane.
Yes, she was like she watched me with that book, and she took care of Nina. My daughter was little. She would, so I could write at night. And I think there was a sort of a matrilineal belief in the project of a woman's voice, the articulation, because I do feel one of the things about Five Spirits is there were at the time not a lot of women's voices in Chinese medicine.
Right.
And it is very much a feminine voice.
Yeah.
It's how do we come at the medicine from an embodied feminine experience? I believe that's part of what that book is speaking for. The yin, not necessarily embodied in a female anatomy, but the yin as it speaks from the earth, from the elements, from the body. And
Somatic, it's embodied, it's intuitive.
yes,
Yes. And so
so I
was,
think
yeah.
the question is, how am I resourced, even as I'm collapsing,
Mm.
even as I am devastated by the the sort of feeling of like, am I prostituting myself here to try and market this?
Mm.
How am I resourced? Where am I resourced? And honestly, Julie, that's what I'm grappling with right now, because the book I'm trying to bring forward now is completely different from any of the books
Yeah.
that I've previously published.
Yeah.
It's debilitating again, in the sense of, so the critic says, you have no right, you don't have a PhD, nobody
Okay.
cares about what you have to say about this topic of the post-soul and addiction and sexual betrayal in the world of healing, and both the sort of complexity of these questions.
Okay, so it's telling you that no one cares about this,
No one cares, especially right now when the
especially
world
right
is,
now, and it's telling you
especially, it's
you're not
always especially
qualified,
right now.
especially right
Now
now.
it's especially right now. There's a war going on. People don't know from one day to the next what's going to happen. Who cares about
Right.
my particular voice?
Right. Okay.
But it's
Yeah.
always right now. It was right now 25 years ago.
And so I think I mean, anyone watching that, like, that's what's so incredible to me about since I've started asking people about their inner critics is the inner critic tends to be like, I don't know if you've noticed, but like quite unoriginal in
Yes,
its issues
yes,
that it has. Like it
yes.
always says
That's
the
so
same thing.
right.
It's always like, who are you to say this? And no one cares about it, basically.
Yes.
And any outsider watching it, like me hearing the inner critic say those things, hearing them vocalized to me, I'm like, well, that's obviously not worth paying any attention to because I happen to know hundreds of people thousands who really actually would think you're like the main authority to share this. And because of what's going on in the world, we need this more than ever, right? So,
No, but I love what you're saying about the inner critic.
yeah.
And one of my understandings, to switch to a depth Jungian understanding, is that it is a negative, we could say, for the feminine, this negative patriarchal introjected voice.
Yes.
Although
It's
I know men grapple with it too, but particularly I think for a woman who in the arts,
yeah.
that voice is really sadistic and
Where does it
critical.
come from? I think it's so
Well,
interesting to consider,
I
right?
would say it's a
Yeah.
collective expression of the patriarchy.
Yeah.
I love how you're saying it's unoriginal. It's unoriginal because it is collective, but it intrudes. And really, the other thing that's tricky about it is it will find one little tiny bit of, like, a little gritty fact. Like, I don't have a PhD.
Right.
I chose to write Five Spirits instead of going to graduate school.
Right.
Honestly, that was partly because I was a single mother and I didn't have the funds to pay for graduate school, and because I'm a quadruple Aries and I like to do things myself. But so my inner critic will grab on that. Like,
Right.
if you had a PhD next to your name, that you would.
Right. Well, I wonder if you did have a PhD, what it would find to tell you you don't
Right, would
have
find
next.
something else. Yes,
You're
exactly.
too educated. You're
Right.
not,
Yes. Yes.
like
Or
you would
you
find
got the wrong
something.
PhD.
The wrong one.
You got the wrong one. Go back to school. Does that sound familiar, Julie?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Right.
But yes, it's very, and I think that lack of originality is so insightful.
Hmm. Yeah. And helpful maybe like in the moment, right? Because I think one of the
Yes.
reasons that I'm doing these interviews is hopefully we can share with each other tools to not be oppressed by that inner critic
Yes.
that really does emerge as we're discussing out of like a collective patriarchy that's, not interested in, these new types of
It's very
perspectives. So,
threatening. I mean,
yeah,
our creativity is by its nature threatening to the status quo.
right. Yeah.
That's just a given. Alchemy is threatening to the status quo.
Yeah.
Alchemy is about transformation, not stagnation
Yeah.
or hyperstructuring.
So, one of the things that I've been talking about with some friends of mine who we've been talking about the inner critic a lot, and you know, at what stage does the inner critic appear in the creative process, right? So, is it while you're working? Is it while you're when you before you've started, or is it in the like when you're ready to publish phase, or is it once your work is out?
Julie,
In the
I
world.
think it comes at
all
all
all of the
where
above.
we can meet the inner critic. But I think
Yeah.
within the creative process,
Yeah.
it's a little different because, from an alchemical perspective, that expansion and excitement that we feel, when we're in flow, we're
Yeah.
in the flow.
Yeah.
You're painting. I've seen you in your studio. It's like
Yeah.
you're in a flow.
Yeah.
And what comes is coming, like you said, from somewhere. It's whether it's a channel or it's a synchronization of the heart and the brainwave patterns in our, whatever it is. It's an erotic rush
Yeah.
when you're in your creativity.
Hmm. Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, I just
Yeah.
wrote the most
Yeah.
incredible chapter. I'm so excited. Then I go
Exactly.
back to read it and it's like, oh God,
Yeah.
this is just terrible. But
Yeah.
understanding the alchemical idea of
Yeah.
the conjunctio, that creative expansion, and the negretto, the
Yes.
contraction,
Yeah.
as necessary,
As part of it. Absolutely. Yeah.
is so helpful.
Yeah. So that said,
That's
um,
that.
and it's so good to remember that, right? When
Yes, that the
when we go through the highs
negretto.
and lows of the cycle of the
Yes, and it's
creative process.
necessary, it's incarnating, it's contracting. So that's been very, very helpful for me.
Yeah. Um,
But the other piece is a little different, when you're
mhm.
really up against it.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel I'm currently really looking at, how do I meet this?
Yeah.
And what I'm getting is it's a lot about resourcing.
Okay. Say more about the resourcing.
Well, what you're doing, like you're saying, I'm doing these talks, this creative altar becomes a place of resourcing for
Mhm.
us.
Yeah.
You and I talking
Yeah.
is resourcing.
Yes.
Really like finding who, what resources me.
Yeah.
Whether it's a meditation practice, a play practice,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
finding where do I go when I feel that I have nothing more to give to this. Like I'm just forget it. I'm putting the manuscript in a drawer,
Yeah.
and it's fine. I did it. And
Yeah.
I think that's where we really need to find, like, have a bank, like a resourcing,
Yeah.
whether it's talking to other artists, like you
Yeah.
said, um, being in nature.
Yeah. So many things come to mind, like thinking about the lifespan of a work of art or a book or whatnot. We live in an age where things cycle so quickly, and we expect these immediate results, ideally within our own lifetime, to see the fruits of the thing, right? Just an obvious example that pops to my mind is the artist Hilma af Klint, who, her works were literally hidden in a vault for, I forget if it was 50 years or something, 100 years. She said, the world's not ready for this, and they need to be hidden away until 100 years, or maybe it was 80 years after my death, and then they can be revealed to the world. The world will be ready then. And so she kind of took
Amazing, right?
herself out of the equation completely. She was an artist who was doing like direct channeling with spirits, and she must have gotten that information about the timeline of her work, but she kind of just set her own ego and personal, ambitions aside with that work. And then it's having incredible success posthumously, right? Um, but that leads me to the next question of, how do we, as we're resourcing ourselves, define success as an artist? And I think that's a really important piece of this conversation. For me lately, I've really been grappling with a similar question of, you know, is it like for me now, my new definition of success is getting, like, how frequently am I able to get into that place of creative flow, you know?
Yes.
And because
Yes.
that's like the peak for me, like, showing my work is fine, uh like I don't really find, like, I do enjoy sharing my work, but it's not where I find the most joy. Like for me, the joy and the true like meaning of it comes in the process and in the making. So at least for now, that's where I'm choosing to rest in like my personal definition of success.
I love that. Like, how frequently
Yeah.
do I access the flow state?
Hmm. Yeah.
And I feel like you just actually put your finger on a really critical piece, because
Okay. Yeah.
art is different for every single person, but everyone, our birthright is to be
Hmm.
an artist, just like our birthright is to be a healer.
Hmm.
I think when I look at people who lived in much more integrated societies, everyone engaged in, whether it was ritual making, pottery making, basket weaving, everything was coming from that flow state.
Hmm.
And I know people whose artistry is creating a process with a group, or working with kids, but it's the flow state
Hmm.
experience
Yeah.
that, well, as you know, when I'm sitting and I do my watercolors, they have nothing to do with anyone looking at them.
Exactly.
And I have the luxury, of course, of that because I have another means of livelihood.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's sitting on the rock and feeling the water and the wind and the clouds
Mm.
speaking through my brush. That's it.
Yeah. I love that so much. It's beautiful. I'm also getting struck by this through line of the story you shared to me of that matrilineal support that came through publishing with the first book,
Yes.
and just hitting that wall and not knowing why this was not flowing or where it was going to end up and so on, and just you went deep and something emerged from below. And it occurs to me again with your new book, like you've gone even more into the yin and more into
Yeah.
something that really our world needs so deeply right now, that I know you're going to find that warrior spirit, that goddess warrior spirit to like defend it and keep birthing it
Well,
and find
it's
those
interesting.
resources.
It's so actually helpful to talk about this with you
Yeah.
because what I'm aware of is what I'm balking at is
Mm-hmm.
bringing it out.
Mm-hmm.
This birthing process does not feel like a flow state
I
at
mean, the birthing
all.
process is not a flow
No,
state,
it's
is
not a
it? It's
flow
really
state.
painful.
It's like, oh, you've got to push and you've got to
Yeah.
breathe and surrender and like keep coming back. I mean, that is, but I guess as we're talking about it,
Yeah.
I'm realizing that maybe we don't separate those two so drastically.
Mm-hmm.
That yes, the flow state is why we do it.
Yeah.
At least for you and me, I think because we have big introverted parts that love being in that deep inner
Yeah. Yeah.
process.
That's
That's
true.
nothing to do with the outer world.
Yeah.
But I think listening
Hmm.
for where the work wants to go,
Yeah. Hmm.
not where my will wants to go.
Yeah. That's a
And I
great,
think
that's a good
that's what I'm
distinction.
grappling with
Yeah.
right now is
Yeah.
where does the work, what does this baby
Hmm.
want?
Yeah.
And it's actually really helpful, Julie, to talk this through with you.
Hmm. So what would success, like how would you define success for this particular piece of writing that's come through? Or is it too
Yeah.
soon to say?
Mm. I really, just like with Five Spirits, I don't know where this book needs to go in the world. I don't have a clear vision about that.
Mhm.
What I do know at this point is my finding the resource I need to stand for the work
Yeah. Yeah.
is the success in this moment.
Yeah. I love that. Yes.
And
I'm feeling
that's
excited
what,
about that.
because,
Yeah.
that has been the process. It's like, can I stand for this? It's
Yeah.
not up to me where it goes.
Hmm.
That's, that's its own destiny. That
Yeah.
was, but I, as the mother of this work,
Yeah.
you have to believe in your kid, right?
Yeah, you do.
And if
I
I don't do that, then that's
yeah.
a betrayal.
I love that. I'm gonna I'm feeling inspired to share another personal story that relates to this conversation.
Great.
So,
I love that this is like so
yeah.
dynamic between us.
So I've had like life has brought me into this world of equine therapy. Like I never thought I would end up in this space, but I've met someone who's become a friend who's a shaman and a, a like a equine therapist essentially. She's part of the Feel program. And she's brought me into this world, and I had a session with this horse recently. I've had a few horse sessions where you get into a ring and it's like this conversation with, the thing about horses is their heart fields are enormous. And so they're empaths, right? Like they can sense into your field and your nervous systems are interacting. And, we start off doing this like heart coherence exercise where you're doing a heart connection, and you set an intention for what you want to be shown, because they're like mirrors. They kind of mirror you where you're at. So there I am in this corral with the horse, asking, my intention just was to show me how to move forward with confidence in my art career. And this horse keeps trying to knock me over physically, and I had to draw this very strong circle around me and declare my space. And then it was all good after that. Like, he respected my space, and our session kind of ended right after that. And
Amazing.
he showed me, like, the experience showed me in my body what I needed to do to stand my ground and to not be knocked over, essentially,
Julie, that is a
Yeah.
beautiful story.
Yeah. I mean,
And
I
it
could.
really clicks when we talk about the critic,
Hmm.
to be able to draw that, like move the critic outside that circle.
Yeah. And not to be sort of like a victim of circumstances, right?
Yes.
It's like finding
Amazing.
the vision, and, there's ebbs and flows, there's storms, there's, the world's a crazy place. We all know that, but just holding my center. And it gave me, and what's incredible is, the facilitators just told me that, you can just think of, the horse's name was Higa. You can just think of your session with Higa anytime you're feeling knocked over or you need that spark again, and it'll be there. Like, you can tap into that field anytime you
So
need. So
beautiful.
it's
Thank you for sharing that. It feels very, you transmitted something really beautiful to me with that story.
good. Good. So it's a great segue to my final sort of question, which I know you're a dreamer. We already talked quite a bit about the lack of clearly dividing lines between dream life, waking life, seeing with dreaming eyes. You've um, shared a little bit about how you work that way with your own intuition. And I was wondering if you'd be willing to share with us a little bit, if you have a dream that sort of is present for you today, that has come through lately, or maybe from another time in your life that has been like a really guiding
Mm,
light for you. And if you
mm.
could tell us a little bit about the role of dreaming for you in finding your way. Okay.
I in this most recent book, dreams play a big role in keeping the narrative moving.
Hmm.
I have kept dream journals for a very long time, and the dream journals from oh almost 30 years become a kind of a through line in that narrative.
Hmm.
I would say right now, it's funny. Last night I had a dream that's coming to me right now, which,
Okay.
and I'm currently in New Mexico, which is not my generally, I'm writing, my work is up on the Northeast on the Maine coast, but I'm here right now. And last night I had a dream about this gigantic tree. And it was, but the interesting thing about the tree was it was covered with little tomatillos, which
Okay.
are those little tiny, ground tomatoes that have a kind of papery skin.
Hmm.
But rather than being just little bushes, it had grown into this enormous, beautiful tree, very fertile, very abundant.
Mm.
And that dream has really been staying with me today because there's something about the papery skin.
Yes, that's what stood out to me too, was this thin skin, right?
Yes, and inside something very kind of complex, like the complexity of the flavor of a tomatillo. It's not just, it's
Mm,
sort of sweet and it's sort of sour. And I think what I'm sitting
mm,
with the dream was it's a kind of reassurance that something is growing and fruitful, and also, as you say, the skin that feels a little papery. Inside there's something lush
yeah.
and very juicy. And so
Hmm.
I'm sitting with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, today particularly, because today I'm going to be working on this project of outreach and
Yeah.
queries and book proposals, which is something that I often bring a pretty resistant attitude towards. But
Okay.
our
Yeah.
conversation
Yeah.
and this dream is
Mm.
kind of shifting my sense of approach.
I
Yeah.
mean, I love that. And I just keep thinking about this skin, the papery skin, right? And almost like you need like a thick skin to go about this part of the process or something, right? Like,
Well, it's interesting though that what's coming to me
hmm,
is that I thought I needed a thick skin.
oh, maybe you don't need a thick skin.
But what is coming to me is that maybe I don't need a thick skin, that I
Hmm.
can let my vulnerability and this sort of trusting, well, that comes back to what we're talking about, trusting the yin.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, because there's something about tomatillos and they're green, they're juicy, they're pretty yin.
Yeah, it's a pretty strange choice of a fruit, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a very strange choice of fruit. Yeah, so I'm working with that dream
What a
today.
rich image. There's so much there to draw from. So,
Yes, and
yeah.
the
Yeah.
of course for me the notion of a big tree, of a tree, is a very important. It has there's a through line with that in the work itself, and that something is growing, is fruitful, and I can trust that.
Yeah. Yes, I love that. And it's full of juicy complexity.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, that's very true.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So
Amazing.
dreams, and I I do feel that they come to us as a resource. Yeah,
Mhm.
place of resource and support.
Well, I look forward to
Good.
seeing what flower comes out of this tomatillo
Well,
tree.
you will definitely
Yeah,
be part of the conversation as it
I
arises.
hope so.
Yes.
So, Lorie, as we're wrapping up this incredible conversation today, is there anything else that you're wanting to share with the people who are viewing? Anything you're working on you want to talk about apart from, we've talked about your incredible new book, which I know will find its path in the world and hopefully soon. But is there anything else you'd like to share or that, yeah,
Yes. Well,
yeah,
there's two things. One
okay.
is, this idea of trusting that the work has its own entelechy,
Hmm.
that I think has been kind of a part of our conversation. And that was I want to say that again,
Hmm.
that there's a certain point where we give over to the entelechy of the work. And
Yeah.
so as you're saying there, you may know it needs to rest. I mean, Jung also said with the Red Book, that's
Mhm.
not to be published until well after my death. And then when it came out, the Red Book has touched so many
That's right.
people.
That's right.
But the other thing, which I
Hmm.
want to speak to, and I just was like, oh my goodness, we never spoke about the fact that you and I are actually
That's
engaged
true. Yeah.
in creating a project together,
Yes.
with this myth from Chinese mythology and your
Hmm.
artwork and
Hmm.
bringing my poetry. And what a joy it is to actually work in partnership
Hmm. Hmm.
and that has been a very different experience, actually, and a welcome experience of co-creating.
Likewise. Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
we'll see where that what the entelechy of that book is.
Yeah. And just for those viewers wwho don't know the term entelechy, could you share with us how you
Yes.
view that concept?
Yes.
Yeah.
Entelechy, again, going to the etymology, en as a prefix means to have, to contain, to have within it,
Mhm.
enclose, um, engine has within it, and telos is its own completion.
Tomatillo.
Julie, that's so good. Oh my gosh. Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
Bringing it all
Yeah.
together,
I
our
love
conversation had its own entelechy
Yes.
leading to Tomatillo.
Okay.
Great.
That's
Yes.
that's how we have to end today. I love this.
I think that will be the completion of this
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. Your tree
Beautiful.
of entelechy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So to have within ourselves, trusting that the work has its own completion within
Hmm.
it.
Yeah. And, my takeaway from this conversation is that our job as the artists, the creators of, the thing that's coming through, you know, our job is to kind of mother and care for this thing and defend it and make sure it finds its way in the world as to the best of our ability. And then we kind of have to
Yes.
let go at a certain point too, right? So,
Just, yes, just like with our kids.
yeah. I'm not there with my actual human child yet, but yeah.
Yes. Yes. No, no, no. When you're not till the let go stage at
Not
all,
yet.
but that
Yeah.
sense of that she has her own
She has her
intelligence.
own path, her own life, and her
Yes.
own destiny.
Innately born with, just like an acorn has the oak tree
That's right.
within it.
Yeah. But our job is to stay resourced enough that we can stand behind our creations. Yeah.
Well,
And help them
thank you.
find
So
their
this
way.
was a
Yeah.
wonderful resource for me to be able to talk about this with you, Julie. So
Thank you.
great.
Thank you so much, Lorie. It's been such a pleasure to dive into these topics, and I
Yes.
really appreciate your generosity of opening up and your time. And maybe we'll do
Likewise.
a follow up once the time is right. So,
To be continued.
yes, absolutely.
All
Thank you
right.
so
Bye for
much.
now, Julie.
Bye.